Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. Today is day 13 in our AU August series. Some of you may remember that I said that I will be taking a short break because I didn't have anything written for day 14 and 15, but don't worry, this one is a longer story. It also is the sequel to one of my most popular stories and my first story on this channel, They Aren't Coming. I would suggest checking that one out first before continuing this. One final thing before we start, a shout out to V at I'm an Anxious Wreck on Tumblr. Happy birthday month. I hope that it is a wonderful month for you, and I hope you enjoy the story. Now let me get into why they didn't come. Chapter 1, Before the Beginning. Get out, Roman shouted. The betrayal filled him to his very core. Magic had always been the source of his problems. Magic was what had killed his parents. Magic was what had separated him from his brother, and Logan had chosen to dabble in the most heinous art. Did he not realize how disloyal this was? Roman, if I could, do not address me with such familiarity. You have been stripped of that privilege. He didn't want to hear Logan's excuses. He didn't want to be twisted and lied to. Logan was one of his best friends, but he had felt the man growing further and further away from the trio. Your Highness, if I could just there is nothing to explain. What was Logan intending to learn from dabbling in magic? He knew the kind of people who practiced such a dark art were the type who were only out for their own gain. Roman had to close himself off, hide the pain he was feeling from the loss of a friend. He kept his voice steady, but his hands were shaking from anger and pain. You dabbled in the forbidden art of magic, and you hid it from me, from us. He gestured to Patton and Virgil, who were standing on either side of him. He wasn't sure what the two of them were going through, but he was sure it wasn't going to be any easier for the two of them. How could I ever trust you again? He watched as Logan flinched, but he hardened his heart. He wasn't sure what lies a man who was willing to do magic was capable of. It's not my choice. Logan's voice sounded desperate, but Roman remained steadfast. There is always a choice. Get out. There was silence in the throne room as Logan seemed to have crumbled as his head remained down, looking at the ground. Finally he whispered, Yes, my king, before turning and walking out, leaving Roman alone with his knight and most trusted confidant, not taking a single scrap of his old life with him. Roman. I just need a second, Pat. His voice dropped to hold a softness that he had refused to give Logan. Please, just a moment. From the corner of his eye, Roman saw Patton nod. He was so thankful for that man as he collapsed his head into his hands. He remembered when Logan had first come to the castle. No family, no home. He had been quiet, refusing to open up to anyone. It had taken years before he first saw Logan smile, and it had been at the hands of Patton's cookies. Logan's soft smile reminded Roman why he wanted to be king. He wanted to be able to bring that smile to all of his citizens, and Logan had been helping with that. His advisor was able to pick up on knowledge and information much quicker than Roman knew. It had taken a lot of soul-searching to not be jealous, but eventually Roman had learned to appreciate Logan for what he was, a brilliant man. Lifting his face out of his hands, Roman began to slowly stand. We will need to begin to look for a new royal advisor at once, someone who can pick up where the previous left off. He could feel the tenseness in the room, neither of the other two wanting to have this discussion just yet. Roman didn't want to have it either. He wasn't ready to discuss the loss they all felt. Chapter 2, Day 3. Patton came rushing into Roman's study. He had long since lost the title of cook, instead becoming one of Roman's 2 fiancées. Yet he still cooked often, and just as often was covered in flour. Roman looked at Patton fondly, standing up to meet him. He knew that something must be wrong because of the sad look on his love's face, but it couldn't be extremely time-sensitive, or Patton would have shouted his name. Over the years, he had learned both of their quirks and marveled in them constantly. My love, what is wrong? He gently brushed the flour off of Patton's cheek, taking comfort in the feeling of Patton's warm skin under his thumb. He truly loved this man. Logan is missing! That name made all of the warmth fade from Roman's eyes, his hand falling to his side. It had been years since he had heard any news about Logan, pushing that part of his past deep into a hole he didn't want to access. It was the greatest betrayal he had ever felt, and the scar it left in his heart still stung. Why should I care? Patton balked, tearing himself out of Roman's reach. Roman, how could you? He was once extremely important to us. He was our best friend. How could you be so callous? He betrayed us, my love. Who knows what he was doing with those powers? What if he had hurt you? He reached out to Patton, who only flinched back. Are you sure about that? I know your experience with magic, my crowning jewel, but Logan was our friend. I think you need to re-examine your biases. There was disappointment in Patton's eyes and voice. It rang out as clear as day, and Roman knew that he was the asshole in this situation. Nothing that Patton felt that strongly about was worth this ire. He just couldn't admit it. He couldn't admit that he was wrong because that meant he had destroyed his first friendship for nothing. He watched Patton walk out of the room, back turned to him, and the door closed in a soft, disapproving manner that shook Roman to his core. He walked back over to his desk as he slumped into his chair. You always let your pride prevent you from seeing the bigger picture. He could hear Logan's voice echoing in his mind. I'm not your enemy, Roman, and I never will be, but sometimes I have to play as your foil to help you understand the consequences of your actions. You do the same for me. It is our relationship, and I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. Then why did you trade it for magic? Roman muttered to himself in an empty room. First Remus, and then Logan. What about magic drew the people most important to him away from him? Chapter 3, Day 4. Patton hadn't come to Roman's bedroom last night, nor had Virgil. It wasn't uncommon for one of them to need time in their own room, but both of them being gone made Roman feel a deep-seated insecurity. Things had been rough after Logan's banishment, and they had never talked about it. Roman had been unwilling to. Maybe he should have. Then he wouldn't be waking up feeling so lonely. After going through his normal morning routine, Roman made his way down to the dining hall. Maybe he could have this discussion today. He didn't feel like he was ready for it, but if it was that important to Patton, he would try. The dining hall was surprisingly empty, and Roman lost his appetite, wondering if he had upset Patton so bad that the two of them couldn't even be in the same room. Not to mention Virgil was missing. What horrible things had Patton said about him? Roman went to his study, working on a few things before just wandering the halls. He couldn't focus, thoughts of Logan plaguing his mind. Prince Roman. He looked so vulnerable, like he was afraid to talk about what was on his mind. Did you see the stars last night? They were absolutely beautiful. You can just call me Roman. Are you certain? It doesn't seem appropriate. I'm certain. Why don't you tell me about the stars? Roman backed up against the wall, letting out a shaky sigh. It was already past lunchtime, and his appetite hadn't come back yet. He wasn't sure he cared. He had made the right choice back then. He was sure of it, but then why did he feel so awful? Why did Patton look so hurt? What the actual hell, Princey? Virgil came storming up to him. What did you say to Patton yesterday that had him stress-baking all night? His knight in black armor had dark circles under his eyes, not an uncommon occurrence, but notably worse today. How long had the two of them stayed up? Were his words so bad that Patton didn't think he could come talk to him about everything? I simply asked him why I should care that traitor is missing. He couldn't say Logan's name. It hurt and felt like a weight in his mouth. That'll do it. Do you really think that was the best response? I know that you have your head up your own ass about this, and I'm willing to support you because I love you, but that was, I'm pretty sure, the dumbest thing you have ever said. Logan was your best friend. All of our best friends. Virgil was pacing by this point. Do you really hate him that much, Roman? His voice was more vulnerable, and Roman knew that his response to this was going to make or break everything. He fought against his own pride, half of him wanting to scream that he hated Logan without a doubt, but the truth came pouring out of him. No, of course not, he broke, throwing his hands up. Of course I don't hate him that much, but he betrayed the kingdom, and I have to make the hard decisions because that's what it is to be a king. Because it's what a king would do. I trusted him with my life, but magic is outlawed for a reason. Roman was shaking, and Virgil finally stopped pacing. He slowly walked over to Roman, wrapping an arm around him. Did you sleep last night? Barely. The bed is so empty without either of you there. Virgil rolled his eyes. We need to talk about this, but you need rest, and so does Patton. So I think I'm going to drag the two of you into a nap. Roman grumbled, but didn't fight. We will be having a conversation afterward, though. Virgil muttered quietly, pushing Roman towards Patton's room. Chapter 4. Day 5. The three of them ended up sleeping through most of the day and waking up pretty early the next morning. Roman didn't want to wake up. He didn't want to get up and face the conversation that they all had to have, but he could feel Virgil stirring and knew that his time was coming to an end. Roman, you awake? He groaned, pretending he wasn't. He just wanted to spend a few more hours enjoying this bliss. Yeah, no. I know what you sound like when you are awake. Get up, your Royal Highness, he said teasingly, before also gently waking Patton. The three of them sat up, and Virgil, who was in the middle, stretched, pushing himself towards the foot of the bed so that he could look at the other two. All right. I don't like being mediator. Normally that's Pat's job, so give me a little grace, 'kay? Of course, my light and storm. Yeah, Patton mumbled, playing with the edge of his shirt. All right. So, do you want to go first? He looked at Patton, giving him space to talk. Sure. I feel like you have decided sticking to an old system is more important than friendship, and it makes me worry that you would be willing to abandon me for the same reason. Roman made a broken noise, wanting to immediately defend himself, but he resisted the urge. He let Patton continue talking. Logan was so important to us, and we abandoned him. But I thought maybe he could be happier because he wouldn't be locked up. He could continue to do whatever made him happy. I didn't want to fight you on your decision because I wanted to stand by you. I love you, Roman. Patton was already tearing up, crying softly, and Roman wanted to reach out and hug him. But those weren't the rules of mediation. Roman took in a deep breath. Magic terrifies me. I watched my parents be torn apart by it, and I see how it affected Deceit. When I found out Logan had been studying magic, I felt betrayed, especially since he had apparently been studying it for years and had never talked to any of us about it. I kicked him out because I couldn't have people around me who I don't trust. I understand where you are coming from. I miss him. Constantly. I'm sorry about how I reacted when you told me he was missing. He couldn't help himself anymore. Roman reached out, offering a hand to Patton for him to take. He was so thankful when his lover did just that, intertwining their fingers together. I'm worried about him, but I also know he can take care of himself. He still might need our help. You know he acts strong, even when he's falling apart. Patton scooted closer to Roman, snuggling against him. Please, Patton whispered. Even if it's not anything big, can we send someone to check on his house? Maybe find a few clues. Roman sighed, wrapping his arms around Patton. All right. We can send someone. 2 people tops, but we are taking precautions. I'm going to go, Virgil said as he scooted closer to the two of them. The knights helped to raise him first. I just feel like he's my brother, and I'm not happy we've left him alone with his captors for so long. We don't even know how long. Honestly, I'm worried. I don't like the idea of you or Patton going. What if it's dangerous? That's a bridge we'll cover when we get there. Roman pouted, but it didn't seem like he had much choice. Fine, but you have to promise to come back safely. Always, Virgil chuckled. The drive to Logan's house wasn't very far, so Virgil would probably leave after breakfast, and there was a GPS tracker in the car, so hopefully everything would be okay. Patton, will you stay with me all day while Virgil is gone? Actually, I was thinking I could go with him, if you'll be okay on your own. Roman hesitated before burying his head in Patton's neck. I'll be okay. I'm not happy about you both going, but at least you can protect each other. But I'm going to be exceptionally clingy until you leave. Oh no, whatever will we do? Virgil mumbled as Patton giggled. Chapter 5, Day 6. Patton and Virgil had not returned until after Roman had already gone to bed. He felt them crawl into the sheets next to him, and he rested easier with the two of them by his side. But when they woke in the morning and told him of what they found, he felt the pit in his stomach grow. The two of them had found a letter from Remus, Roman's brother, stating they had kidnapped Logan and wouldn't return him without Roman as a trade. Remus was chaotic and destructive, and Roman didn't know what his brother might have done to Logan, but it made him worry. They didn't write where they were, Patton had told him, and it only made Roman worry more. He didn't know how to track down two people who didn't want to be found, one of whom who had magic. I'm going to spend the rest of the day trying to come up with a plan, Roman had said, but I also am finally going to go through Logan's room. Virgil and Patton both offered to go with, and though Roman had initially intended on turning them down, he knew he needed the emotional support. They opened the long-neglected room after breakfast, stepping into a time capsule that had only been sealed a few years ago. And yet the nostalgia hit Roman hard. Tacked to the corkboard were all of the holiday cards Logan had received from the three of them over the years, and sitting under them was a shelf lined with gifts and baubles he had received. Just looking at the room, it was obvious that Logan had been loved and cared for. It was obvious how much Roman had cared. His house looks so empty in comparison, Virgil muttered as he walked in, looking around. Or, I guess, colder. Do you know what I mean? Patton nodded. Yeah, he didn't have anything personal in his house. Not really. Roman's breath caught in his throat as he began to trace over the bookshelf. Logan's thirst for knowledge was what had gotten him caught. There were books in the library that were forbidden, hidden behind a door that only Logan had the code to, and he had left it open. Roman had seen the missing books and knew only one person had to be studying magic. Apparently, Logan had been studying it intensely. His bookshelf was filled with other books on magic, though many of them were regarding the destruction of magic. The pit in his stomach grew as he walked to Logan's desk and picked up a notebook. I have made no further headway in how to remove magic from a person. Though silver does seem to dampen one's abilities, I highly doubt injecting silver into my body will result in a pleasant experience. Magic seems to be an innate ability, as closely tied to someone's being as their lungs or heart, though it would be easier if there were an organ all of a person's magic was stored in. Then I could remove it, and I would no longer have to lie to my friends. I have commissioned a silver bracelet I can wear to keep my powers hidden. It will be another week before it is ready, but I am already counting the days. Magic users may not be outright condemned here, but I doubt there are many people who would be comfortable being born with these powers. It is cumbersome to have to hide it to fit in, though I've known for a while I need to hide my powers. I didn't have as much control as a child. I wonder if that's why my mother abandoned me. Roman dropped the book, covering his mouth with his hands. All of his decisions came crashing down on him. If magic was just a part of Logan, he really hadn't had a choice. Roman had abandoned him for something he couldn't choose and couldn't change. He had turned around and done the same thing Logan's mother had done. Even worse, Roman had made Logan feel like he needed to destroy a piece of himself to be accepted. "Roman!" Patton came over to him, and he looked up at Patton with guilt-ridden eyes. "What did I do? Patton, how could I do that to someone?" Virgil picked up the journal, flipping through it until he got to the end. "What did you read, honey? What was in the book?" "Magic is something you're born with," Virgil said quietly, and if Roman hadn't read it from Logan's private journal, a place where he thought he had privacy, he might not have believed it. But what use was it to lie to himself? "I feel like such an asshole. And now we can't even find him. Hera, if I had just listened to him back then, maybe he would be safe now." Virgil set the journal down before kneeling to hug Roman, holding him close. Roman felt absolutely awful. He wasn't sure how he was supposed to fix all of this. How was he supposed to find his friend that he had abandoned? How was he supposed to apologize to someone he had hurt so badly? "Let's get the guard together. The first priority should be trying to find Logan." Roman nodded. "But we don't even know where to look for him." "We'll figure it out," Patton chimed in. "Then you can apologize properly." Again, Roman nodded, slowly standing up as Patton and Virgil helped him. It was unbecoming of a king to look so completely distraught, but he didn't care. He had spent so many years trying to convince himself to hate his best friend. "Virgil, send out some knights to start looking for him. Let the police know we have a bulletin out. Tell them not to engage, but to send all information to me immediately." "Of course." Virgil stiffened, trying to clean his face. "If we don't hear anything in 48 hours, I'm going to his place myself and looking for him." He was trying to be practical. He knew that it was going to take a bit of time to find anything out, but he also knew he wouldn't survive waiting more than 2 days. Virgil and Patton both agreed with him, and they led Roman back to his room. He still had meetings to attend today, and he needed to get himself rested before he tackled those. Chapter 6, Day 8. It hadn't actually been 48 hours, but it had been close enough. There wasn't a single word about where Logan was, so Roman hopped into one of his cars, Patton and Virgil not far behind him. "You aren't driving, Ro," Virgil said, pulling open the driver's seat. "You are too emotionally compromised." Roman made an offended noise looking at Virgil. "I am great." "Yes, you are. But I'm still not allowing you to drive." Virgil was complimenting him with ease. Roman knew he wasn't going to win, so instead he got in the passenger seat, Patton already taking a spot in the back. It took them an hour and a half to get to Logan's apartment. Not because it was that far away, but simply because the infrastructure wasn't there for fast travel. Roman would have to work on that. He didn't like having to wait so long after already waiting longer than he'd thought he should have to. As soon as the car was parked, Roman pushed open the door, ready to barge in and look for any clues, but he stopped dead in his tracks. Standing in front of one of the apartment doors was an exceedingly familiar man, and his counterpart, who had snake scales littered all over his face. The snake-scaled man was leading another man out by the hand gently, and he couldn't remember seeing Logan smile that wide, not in a very, very long time. Patton gasped, also catching a glimpse of the three of them, watching as Prince Remus kissed Logan's neck and a deep red blush covered their stoic friend. Roman slowly got back in the car, closing the door. I think Logan's found his happiness." Virgil reached out and took Roman's hand. "Yeah, we should be proud of him." Roman nodded slowly, watching as Logan smiled a small, sweet smile for the two people that Roman was beginning to think he misjudged. "I am. I truly am." He turned to look at Virgil. "Let's go home now." "As you wish, my prince." Thank you all for listening. Again, that was Why They Didn't Come, the second in my They Aren't Coming series. I honestly think I may eventually write a third, but it took a year, I believe, in between the first and the second, so don't keep your fingers crossed too hard. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.